still happily married, just didn't really push it on me. I just, of course, followed in his footsteps naturally, because who wouldn't know about this and then fight it once they became a man? Who wouldn't? I mean, it's a default, because we're not being conquered by some loving, altruistic corporate government that's replacing some tyranny with some wonderful new freedom. The Asian Union, the American Union, and the EU all started as trade deals. And they're secret, they're draconian, they're arbitrary, and all of it is now on display. Just as 22 years ago, when they officially kicked off the EU, it really started in '57 with the Treaty of Rome, a trade deal, England could not vote whether they wanted to be part of it or not. And they still, to this day, we can't basically even find out what's in it. In fact, put that back on screen. I was getting distracted as they put an article on screen as I was reading it. Obama warns TPP failure would let China write trade rules. See how globalism works? That's what Henry Kissinger came out, along with Larry Summers, about a month ago. They both wrote articles in op-eds, one for the New York Times and one for the Washington Post. They were republished in the Foreign Affairs, the Council on Foreign Relations publication. And they said, we're falling apart because we haven't embraced globalism enough. We've got to give up all our rights to these world bodies, or this new global government will have all the say, and if we don't become part of it, we'll still be under it and have to take its edicts. See how that trick works? They create the global private corporate government, won't let the Congress see what's in it, and then say, we won't have any say on it unless we join with it, when the elites in our own country set up the UN, set up the World Trade Organization, set up the different currency agreements that are in place today. But not to empower America, but to use American muscle and ingenuity to build this planetary government. But now, it's finally caught the public's imagination. It's finally caught their interest that, wait a minute, until 2 months ago, even Congress, members of the House and Senate, couldn't see the multi-thousand-page Trans-Pacific Partnership that's constantly being changed and altered in secret corporate/governmental committees that meet in different countries every few months. And then now Congress has voted, the Senate has voted, to hand total authority over trade to the president to sign on to this agreement. Now, it's got to go by a House hurdle. But this is planetary government on parade. And remember, if you look at who's funding this, if you look at who's funding the moves to open our borders, the moves to go after our guns, the moves to federalize our health care, the moves to put our military under NATO command, and Congress is told they have no authority, who's shutting off our power plants, who's getting rid of our jobs, who's putting regulations in to shut down our industry that China, India, Mexico, and 160-plus third world countries are exempt from, it is the TPP crowd. And it's a select robber baron interest that want to put up basically trade barriers, tariffs, unofficial tariffs, by putting regulations on our goods that are not equally on other goods and calling it free trade when it's the opposite. But that's only one part of it. Free speech is attacked. Whistleblowers are attacked. The sovereignty is attacked. Currencies, everything. It's all in here. But on top of that, even major corporations are against it, like Google. Here's the London Guardian headline. Hundreds of tech companies line up to oppose TPP trade agreement. Letter signed more than 250 companies, demands greater transparency, and says dangerously vague language would criminalize whistleblowers. The TPP would create an environment hostile to journalists and whistleblowers, said policy directors of the Electronic Frontier Foundation and Fight for the Future co-authors of the letter. TPP's trade secret provisions could make it a crime for people to remove or reveal corporate wrongdoing through a computer system, says the letter. The language is dangerously vague and enables signatory countries to enact rules that would ban reporting on timely, critical issues affecting the public. Among the signatories are activist sci-fi author, Guardian tech columnist Cory Doctorow. Quote, democracies make their laws in public, not in smoke-filled rooms. And it goes on from there. But understand, Congress is saying the president can sign whatever he wants. The U.S. Senate, the Republican leadership joining with Obama to trump sane Democrats and sane Republicans who are saying no. They combined forces to pass it in the Senate. It's a bigger battle in the House. But look for Boehner to try some trick or to attach it to a budget bill to ram this through. In the past, countries were conquered by armies. And you could see an army coming, as Cicero said in Rome 2,060-something years ago. He said that an enemy that comes with their banner openly flying is a lot easier to defeat than espionage and intrigue and manipulation and subterfuge within. And these big corporations, folks, here's an example. General Electric is for it. General Electric also was given over 300 waivers on their power plants in the U.S. to burn coal when their competition wasn't. Their competition was shut down. General Electric, in 6 years, upgrades, accelerates, increases power output, profits explode. That's what TPP is about. Arbitrary, secret, rapacious, picking winners and losers. So America is being conquered right now by secret global treaty as the trilateral world government plan goes into overdrive. We're going to break more of this down straight ahead and talk about what life will be like under the TPP dictatorship. But when you look at how the European Union operates, when you look at how the North American Union operates, and the fact that most Americans don't even know that there's been an NAU by treaty since 2005. When you look at how the subsets of the trilateral global plan works, you already know what's in the treaty. Absolute draconian oppression. And Senator Warren has claims that she's read much of the multi-thousand pages and says that it's very bad for America. Other members of Congress, like Senator Sessions, have looked at it. He says it's extremely bad as well. What I know is we shouldn't support anything that's secret and that transfers sovereignty overseas. And by the way, South Korea has the fastest growing economy in the world for multi-decades running, and they have refused to even be part of the talks. They're not stupid. When China is basically quarterbacking the entire thing. And our elite has already sold out to the communist generals, basically, to get sweetheart deals with factories in China to make billions of dollars per family. That's a big part of what's happened here is we've been sold out. But before we do that, I talked about the big multinational banks that are promoting TPP. Here's Bloomberg. 6 banks, this came out, of course, Wednesday, pay $5.8 billion. 6 banks. 5 guilty of market rigging. J.P. Morgan Chase, Citigroup, Barclays, Royal Bank of Scotland, and others agree to have the felony charges basically dropped by pleading guilty to conspiring to manipulate the price of U.S. dollars and euros globally. Some days making over $100 billion. And so for years of doing this, they're going to pay $5.8 billion. That's like robbing $1 million and giving the police a $500 tip. That's even better than when, what were the companies a few years ago? Bloomberg reported on that as well. It was Wachovia and Wells Fargo pled guilty to laundering in a 2-year period $378 billion of narcotics money, and they paid it a $111 million fine.
That was HSBC too, right?
HSBC's been involved in market rigging as well, yes. They all are. Interest rates are rigged. The stock market's rigged. It's all come out. And these are the people, these are the groups involved in the money laundering, involved in the bid rigging, involved in scamming everything, and creating $2.2 quadrillion in the last 20 years of fake money that they get to use to leverage and take over the world. 2,200 trillion is I don't know, last time I saw, some estimates are 80 times, 120 times more wealth than there is in the world, projected out for 100 years. I mean, these bankers have basically counterfeited so much money, and then now they're busy globally taking over small banks, taking over mom-and-pop operations, taking over credit unions. Let's be clear. When I criticize banks, I mean the big global five. They run the drugs, they own the aircraft, they've been caught running the sex slaves. They're involved in everything. And here's the deal. They're not just big evil boss hogs. They're the ones funding the anti-family movement. They're the ones demonizing manhood. They're the ones pushing to break up families. They're the ones pushing to force inoculate and fluoride in the water. They're the ones pushing for all the tyranny. They're creeps. They're scum. They're parasites. So 6 banks pay $5.8 billion, 5 guilty of market rigging, Bloomberg. Here's another one. Well, this is USA Today. 5 banks guilty of rigging rates pay more than $5 billion. Zero Hedge. J.P. Morgan officially apologizes for being a criminal market manipulator. You know what's crazy is, I talk about this stuff 20 years ago because it's all been known forever, before I was born. And people would call in and say, oh, it doesn't exist, you're crazy. Now it's all admitted and no one gets in trouble. Does that not creep everybody out? So now the Congress, preliminarily in the House has passed it. The Senate now passed the final deal in the Senate. Now it's being sent to the House for final certification to make Obama, that's a whole other issue, a baby dictator, to be able to decide any trade deal he wants and sign any agreement in secret and then keep the results secret. How Kafka-esque is that? Kafka, what wrote The Trial. Read that book when I was like 18 years old. I've forgotten half of it. But the guy's charged, but he won't be told the charge. And he's given a trial, never told what he did, and then executed. That's why you call it Kafka-esque. It's just, well, you can't see it and you can't see the law. It's like, oh, the IRS won't answer your phone calls on Obamacare and won't say what policy or law is. Talk to the hand. This is the new level of crazy town that we have reached in this country and this world, because a whole bunch of other countries are signing on to this. TPP. Let's go over a breakdown of the TPP from the congressional breakdown that has been released to the public. Let's go over what they say about it. Let's go over the history. During the 2002 Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation meeting in Los Cabos, Mexico, they began the agreement in secret. So it's 14 years old. Trans-Pacific Partnership, Trilateral Commission Plan. The talks started with Pacific P4 in 2008, officially, again in secret. They had 19 formal rounds of negotiations since then. All secret. All secret. All special deals and special interest in there with all these lawyers writing it. And it will transfer all U.S. trade representative systems to any country touching basically the Pacific Ocean, which is almost the entire planet. I mean, Africa technically goes into the Pacific. Russia, Japan, the United States, just basically everything. It continues. But again, under Trilateral Commission, the agreements have already been signed to transfer the power. Investor-state arbitration, global taxation, where money goes, not allowing you to leave with money. Getting rid of offshore trust for small groups, not for the elite. It's sewing the planet up. Negotiation of secrecy in further treaties. Currency manipulation. Tariffs are to be agreed to by now this foreign group. Intellectual property. That's the big one that has the major tech companies saying it's horrible because it ends free speech, ends any type of intellectual property except for the elite groups that are part of this. And it continues. Cost of medicine globally is decided. Income inequality, that means global taxation. Environment. They said they could anything directly threatening our climate and our environment, including new rights that would be given to corporations, and new constraints on fossil fuel industry all have a huge impact on our climate. These are quotes that they've released in the